like round 3 is ready to go. So here we are. We've got Gerrick Alford, who we did see yesterday playing in the team event, and Zach Cavers, 5-color Zoo versus Azorius Control. Okay. Well, without even looking at the deck lists yet, I'm going to say 5-color Zoo is going to be trying to be real fast and get underneath Supreme Verdict here.
See, it's funny. I always have to take a look. You've probably had this feeling too with the melee naming of decks. People
That's
sometimes where they put
true.
5-color Zoo, but it's actually just 4-color control.
You're
This is
right.
actually this is unironically this is actually a 5-color Zoo deck. There's Bloodbraid Elf, Mantis Rider, Scion of Draco, Tribal Flames. So I appreciate Zach for utilizing the deck naming convention correctly here and not just calling it 5-color Zoo but playing Bird or something. So
Yeah, all these people loving to do that. Ivan Espinosa, who won the Nerd Rage Championship last year, really set a bad example for everybody by just loving doing this in every format, every event. It's just so, I mean, some people are going to call it cool. I'm going to say it's just lame. I'm just tired of it. But yeah, all right, here we go. So Zach Cavers down a card here on a mulligan, and Gerrick Alford with control deck, probably not knowing what he's facing yet. You see Wooded Foothills, like, oh, it's a 4-color control deck, no problem. But yeah, actually it isn't.
yeah, and noticeably now this is a Zoo deck. Now a lot of people associate Zoo with 1-drops like Wild Nicottle, Goblin Guide, Loam Lion, going all the way back in the day, things like that. This is much more of this deck is basically all 2s and 3s. There's no 1-drops here. There's no Ragavans. There's no Nicottles. It's Scion of Draco and Territorial Kavu on turn 2, and then Mantis Rider and Shardless Agent on turn 3. So, 1-drop, you see a Zoo deck with no 1-drop, you might think that that's a little awkward, but that is exactly how Zach wants to go about it. So,
yeah, okay. And then this control deck, this is a Narset Days Undoing deck, a little heavier on the Days Undoing. Now, I'm not up on all the numbers in the different control variants in Modern, but having 3 copies of Days Undoing, that seems heavy to me.
yeah, that is. Oh, and we see a Chalice of the Void from Gerrick Alford. Now, Gerrick doesn't know that Chalice basically has no text, but that's kind of probably a fist pump from Zach, right?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, there's lightning bolts, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
4
yeah,
bolts.
so no problem. For Zach, yeah, that basically makes up for his mulligan.
Yeah, exactly. We both mulligan. Now everything's fair. Now I'll have to see what kind of 3-drop that Zach has. I assume there's got to be a 3 with no 1 or 2. No Kavu or no 2. I guess I should say. Well, no 3-drop. Okay.
Okay, so that's now we're getting. I mean, no 1-drops in your aggro deck. That's fine. You're just designed that way. No 2-drop this game. Okay, no thing on 3. I feel like you're starting to get worried at
Yeah,
this
and that
point.
kind of makes you wonder what is in Zach's hand. So probably a lot of burn. We see Lightning Helix, I believe. I think I maybe saw Tribal Flames. So it looks like Zach's hand maybe. Ooh, you know what? It might be a Bloodbraid Elf, and with that Teferi in play, that's kind of awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, problems developing here for Zach Kivers here in game 1 of round 3. Picked up the first 2 matches, but this one's not off to a great start. And for Gerrick, may have figured out what's playing against at this point, just because what else is it? I mean, there's all these land types in play. Was this Tribal Flames, alternate art? Yeah,
Tribal
takes down
Flames.
Teferi.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a one for one trade against Teferi. I mean, that's nothing to complain about.
Yeah, and if he didn't know before, now he definitely knows he's playing against a Zoo deck. And that Chalice, that one's a little bit more backbreaking because there are quite a bit of 2s. So we have Tribal Flames, Lightning Helix, Territorial Kavu. I guess that's it, but that's still a decent amount of cards that you're stopping with that Chalice on 2.
Is this the general that just came into play here? What is this?
That is General Ferrous Rokiric. So that is I believe that's from MH2. It's a 3-mana 3/1. It's got some, I think it has First Strike maybe. And then when you cast a multicolored spell, you make a 3/3 golem.
Aha, even 4/4. Yeah, there we go.
4/4, sorry.
Yeah, hexproof from monocolored. Okay.
And Hexproof from monocolored, pretty relevant here because the Jace can't bounce it.
Right. Here's the Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah. And awkward with the Chalice. I was going to say this is good for us because this is good for Zach because we cleared the Teferi last turn. Now he gets to play the Bloodbraid Elf essentially uncontested. Was that a miss trigger? Oh, I think that might have been a miss trigger from the Ferrous Rokiric off the Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah, that's Well, okay,
wouldn't
so
have
it doesn't
mattered.
actually matter, but yeah, that is something you want to avoid. A 4/4 is not something to shy away from here, but Supreme Verdict does clean things up. Another Ferrous Roderick would be nice. I believe there's only 2 copies in the deck. Here's a Mantis Rider. Okay, that's something.
Yep, not a 2-drop or a 1-drop, so that can get in there. And I believe Zach's leftover. I saw Tribal Flames. I have to take a look. He's got a lot of promotional cards, so it's kind of hard to tell what's in Zach's hand outside of that Tribal Flames. Yeah, he drew a card. I have no idea what that is. It's like, okay, Bloodbraid Elf.
We know that one. Let's see. Can he find something he
Oh,
can actually play?
this is the dream.
Yeah. So this is a guaranteed miss on Shardless Agent with double Chalice on the board, but what are you going to do?
Yep.
I wonder if Zach has no plans on removing those chalices, I think he's just choosing not to cascade in, not to play the spells, but maybe you want to actually let them get countered so they're not back in the deck.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because now if Zach cracks a fetch land, you're shuffling
Mhm.
away the dead Helix. So yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. You probably just want to, just cast it just to get it out of your deck.
All right. So trade here, and 3 comes across.
And we saw a subtlety on the Shardless Agent, which Zach put to the bottom, which makes sense because of the Chalice in play. The Shardless is not doing anything essentially. It's just a 3-mana 2/2.
Mhm.
So definitely wants to put that at the bottom for sure. He's looking for more Bloodbraid Elves, more Mantis Riders, stuff like that.
Yeah, in fact, exactly those probably. So let's see. Do we have any? I don't think we have even a way to get rid of these chalices in the main deck. So
Not that I'm seeing, no. Looks like we have Force of Vigor in the sideboard, but yeah, nothing, no Prismatic Ending or anything like that to main deck, which makes sense. You can't really play Prismatic Ending with Elf and Shardless Agent, so understandably so. But yeah, no ways to remove Chalice game 1.
yeah, and another Jace comes down. Here's a Scion, I think, which
Yes.
may
Yep.
be paying 2 mana for, but Chalice is not anywhere close to countering, so that's nice.
You don't think we're going to see a Chalice on 12 this game?
I mean, I don't even know what it would be. Let's see, like original. How many even cards in the format cost 12? One of the original Eldrazi, I think, cost 12. Oh, Director
It
David
that
comes up with
betrays.
it that betrays. Yeah, all right. Well, Gerrick Alford. Yeah, all right.
I think there might have been an affinity card. What's the there's like a yes, Mycosynth Golem. That's the one that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, all right. So big mistake from Gerrick Alford, not planning on charging up his lands and running up 24 mana to Chalice on 12, but he decided to play them for 1 and 2. I guess he's probably satisfied with what he's done so far, and this Jace is still out there. Still feels like okay. Here's Narset. It still feels like Gerrick likely has control of this game, but he is now facing quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he finds something like a Supreme Verdict this turn. Yeah, because I don't believe Gerrick has played a land, so if he hits a Verdict off of the Narset, was that a miss? Or did we just not catch it because the Narset was there? I was going to say, it's very hard for Garrick's deck to miss on a Narset. It's basically all spells.
Oh, there's a
Okay.
Days Undoing.
So this is good, but there's still 7 power in play. And Zach is going to get to draw a single card. And then a card for his draw step. So there's 7 power in play. And if we take a look at Garrick's deck list, okay, there is Solitude. So that is a card that Gerrick is potentially drawing into Solitude to take care of the Scion of Draco.
Okay, yeah. Otherwise, looking like with 2 planeswalkers on the board, Zach Havers would have the option here, being tempted by the left total of one being 1 shy on where he sends the attacks here, depending on we'll see what is drawn up here. As he only gets 1. Gerrick gets 7.
This what a feeling, you draw your 1 card and then you look at your opponent just fanning out 7. Just God, that's got to be demoralizing.
Rather lopsided. Yeah, here comes the attack in.
We'll see if there was a Solitude drawn. I think there was. Yes, there was. Okay.
All right.
And normally this would be a spot where you would want to draw something like Tribal Flames, but because of the Chalice, that one's a non-starter.
Yeah, and preserving through this turn now, and both planeswalkers still on the board, as Zach was obviously going to attack Gerrick. I don't know why I corrected myself. I was like, I said the name, and I was like, wait, no, that's the planeswalker. I must have read it wrong, but no, that is his name. Gerrick Alford here. Probably feeling pretty safe now.
Yeah, Gerrick is getting relentless this game.
Yeah. 2 force negations and 3 force negations in hand. Probably don't need any of those. I'm not sure. I guess there's Riveteers Charm. That's not going to do any good either. That might be the only actual non-creature spell that Zach can even resolve through a chalice at this point. Another Verdict cleans the board. So
yeah, we don't like to call games this early too often, but with, we're going to like, oh, Riveteers Charm. Okay. All right. Maybe I spoke too soon. That's going to be a draw 3. Oh, no, we're going to force it. Okay. Yeah, it just seems really, really difficult for Zach to really get anything going in the face of the Jace and the Chalices. Oh,
yeah,
there's a Mantis Rider. Okay. Maybe there's no more Solitudes. That is, yeah, and we're going at face. I actually like that. I think you're kind of past the point where you want to attack the Planeswalker. So I kind of like going face and just kind of maybe hope that Gerrick can't find an answer.
Yeah. Okay, so on the Jace draw 3, I didn't see any white cards drawn, which are generally what the answers are going to look like. This Mantis Rider didn't have haste. Jace could have just bounced it to buy a turn, but that's not the case. So let's see if Gerrick actually being put to the test here. There's Prismatic Ending. That's going to work.
Yep, so there's an answer for the Rider. You know what that is? That's a Gaia Reach Sanitarium.
Yeah, so that will... Zach still has a card in hand, so he's not completely locked out yet.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's the Ferrous Rokiric, the one that makes golems. Okay, not a haste creature though. That's really what Zach was looking for there.
Yeah, and now here's the Gaia Reach activation, which from Zach's perspective, he won't get to draw because of Narset, so he just discards a card and loses from hand. And now
this is the hard lock, right?
Yeah, I believe we are locked.
You just draw step activate Sanitarium every game. Yeah, this should be locked up.
Yeah, so there's a verdict. So the only vulnerability for Gerrick now are instants, and Chalice on 2 is going to protect from Chalice on 1 and 2 will protect from that, and Zach Gravers will just draw straight into the graveyard.
Yep.
And I guess we don't even need a win condition. Jace is already on the board.
Jace.
Yeah. And that's it. So Zach Gravers will
do it.
Drop game 1 here. Basically the might of the Chalices there played a role, but Zach also just did not get off to a good start. This is a somewhat unusual deck. Let's go ahead and pop up the deck list here and take a look. See Zach Havers' 5-color zoo deck.
All right, so what are we looking at in the sideboard? Now, obviously, Zach is aware of the Chalices, so we're probably going to have to get to look at something like Force of Vigor. That one's probably a slam dunk. Even though, there's not a lot else besides Chalice, but his deck it's really hard to play into a Chalice on 2, so I can understand that. Rest in Peace, probably no. Damping Sphere, maybe Unmoored Ego to stop the Narset Days Undoing lock, but even that one's kind of sketchy. But yeah, it's pretty much just Force and Ego, I think the cards that Zach might potentially be looking at.
Now, Hidetsugu Consumes All. I know it wipes out 1-drops. Does that wipe out 0s as well? Would that take out the Chalice, or is it just creatures? I actually don't remember the wording on this card. Maybe we can bring that up.
It does, actually. You're right. I think it's non-land permanent. So that one actually might be good against Chalice, too. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's because you're right. I mean, it hurts to bring in Force of Vigor against the Chalice, where the Chalice is just kind of an incidental part of the deck. It's not, part of some strategy that's going to include a lot of artifacts and enchantments. But let's go ahead and look at Gerrick Alford's Azorius control deck and see what we see what we have to peer at here. Incarnations and Planeswalkers seems to be the order of the day.
Yep, there's the Chalices that we saw. We got there's another interaction, Dress Down versus Territorial Kavu. We'll see if that maybe comes up. But yeah, as far as Gerrick, he's probably going to want to look at getting the Force and Negations out of his deck. Those ones don't seem particularly great against Sue for the most part. Subtlety, maybe, but if you're trading Subtlety, because Subtlety is kind of awkward against the Cascade cards,
right?
Because you don't want to put the Cascade cards on top, and most of the time the card that they're cascading into is free anyway, so that's not really a good exchange. But yeah, pretty much just the forces. Maybe you trim on the Narset days and doing stuff depending on how much he has to board in, things like that.
We have the sideboard for Gerrick Alford.
Potentially.
If we don't have that ready to go, that's... Oh, here we go. All right.
There it is.
So we can see it is a Kaheera deck. All right, so what... Well, we have Extra Supreme Verdict. That sounds like a winner. Maybe the debate comes down to whether Shark Typhoon is sort of an answer to haste creatures as we move into the middle late game. That's potential, because you did mention a few cards that want to come out, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of obvious candidates coming aside from the Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, potentially the Shark Typhoon, maybe the additional copy of Chalice. Aether Gust is a card that maybe he's looking into, because that can hit the Ferrous Rokiric. It's kind of awkward against Bloodbraid Elf. Maybe not the best against Tribal Flames, because those cards are cheap, so maybe it's only good against the Ferrous Rokiric. But yeah, there's maybe the additional Dress Down against Kavu, that one could come in as well. But yeah, there's not a ton that Gerrick is looking for here.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and head down to the table and see if Zach can have a little bit better start this game.
Yeah, avoid getting locked out, the prison, as it were, with the Nars. What a brutal lockout too. Narset plus Gaia Reach Sanitarium, especially if there's a Teferi in play. That's just the hard lock, because you can't cast any spells on your draw step. So,
well, hey, we can still channel.
You could. I don't know what I guess so. Kenzan maybe.
Okay. Zach Kaheera is looking to put on a little better show this game than last game. Turn 1 looks the same, which we knew it would.
Yeah, this is kind of the important part. We'll have to see if Zach has a 2-drop, because as we saw last game, Zach just went nothing on 2, nothing on 3. And Gerrick wasn't under any pressure. It was really easy for Gerrick to kind of set up through that. Zach really, really wants to have a Kavu or a Scion, preferably Scion, because that one doesn't die to a, what's the card? Dress Down.
Dress Down.
So yeah. So we're gonna see a 5/5 Kavu here. Territorial Kavu has been cast from Zach. So we'll have to see again. We talked about the interaction between that and Dress Down. It's not great for the Kavu player, because it makes it a 0/0 and then it would just immediately die. So
yeah, well, I'm sure that's something. I mean, Dress Down sees plenty of play in the format, so Zach Kaheera must know that feel it's worth the risk, as 2-mana 5/5 is somewhat above curve.
Yeah, now we'll have to see if Zach potentially has a second Kavu. That would be a little dicey. Probably don't ever want to extend the second one into 2 open mana, right?
Here's an attack for 5. Okay, it's gonna eat a Solitude. Well, that's
fine.
Yeah, that is a worthwhile trade.
That is a trade that I'm sure Zach is pretty happy with.
Yeah, I needed a follow up there though. Doesn't have one. Gerrick is perfectly happy to just play a land and pass the turn.
Yeah, so no follow up there. Might mean a Bloodbraid Elf. Because obviously if there was a Mantis Rider or a Ferrous Rokiric or anything like that, Shardless Agent, we would have seen it cast. So it could be a Bloodbraid Elf, could just be a handful of Burn too.
Yeah, well, Burn is nice, especially when it's Tribal Flames hitting for 5 apiece, and there's at least one of them in there. But it's hard to take your opponent all the way down with spells.
I love that. I love that basic land choice,
by
the way.
That's a monotext planes there. Yeah, okay. All right.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, double Cascade.
So are we responding to the Cascade trigger? Oh, this is actually really heads up from Gerrick. So he's going to respond to the Shardless Cascade trigger, put the Bloodbraid Elf on top. So that means, yeah, this is really smart, because obviously if you top it, then it just gets cascaded away anyways. Very heads up play by Gerrick.
All right. So here we go. Still, this is another solid exchange for Zach, card economy wise, rebuilding the board here, and Gerrick losing a couple more cards. I mean, this is almost 2 creatures for Zach, and then -2 cards for Gerrick. All right. Kavu gets bounced again, or not again, gets bounced, but Teferi's vulnerable.
Yeah, just look at the card disparity. Zach has 6 cards to Gerrick's 3. And it's just, Gerrick has been kind of put into these awkward situations where, yeah, he's answering the creatures, but at what cost? And he's not really developing his board or anything like that. Maybe has a Supreme Verdict in his hand, and we're going to be able to cast that with the Polluted Delta. But maybe even if there was a Supreme Verdict, maybe you wouldn't see him fight over the creatures that he did so aggressively with Solitude and Subtlety. So it's not even clear that he has Verdict lined up.
Right. And this is, these two creatures here. So this is 7 damage on the board. Plus, when the Kavu attacks, Zach will be able to rummage, which is not bad. Go ahead and clean things up long game. And okay, there is a verdict. So Zach Taylor's board will start over again. And with Gerrick still at 18, I mean, this is, he's got a lot of work to do here. And I think there's a Force of Vigor in hand, which is just useless at the moment. Like we talked about, if the chalices aren't drawn, there's not really anything else for it to hit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's awkward, right? From Zach's perspective, he knows how powerful Chalice on 2 is against this deck because a lot of the heavy hitters in his deck are 2 mana, like Territorial Kavu, Tribal Flames. So he kind of feels compelled to bring them in, but then you get into spots like this where, his opponent, Gerrick, was down a lot of cards because he's had to use Solitude and Subtlety, but Zach's also down cards because he essentially drew a blank. So
yeah. Okay, Gerrick. So actually needs to ponder over the turn here. Figure out how best to deal with this general and the 4/4s it may bring with it.
Yeah, I think I see a Jace, a Chalice, which I guess we finally got a target for the Force of Vigor, which is not bad.
So this is a Helix in response here, and this is kind of a brutal. I mean, you're 18 life here. You're taking 3, and then you're gonna Zach's gonna tap and attack for at least 7. That's pretty threatening.
Yeah, that's a really good turn for Zach. Just the double spell of Rokiric plus the burn spell make a lot of power. This looks like maybe a Bloodbraid Elf too, just going to make even more golems. Could make even more golems if he cascades into a Shardless Agent.
Well,
okay,
this
probably not the card he wanted to hit.
Right, and this time it makes more sense to put it back in the deck as there is ways to deal with the Chalice, but still pretty solid attack here. And Gerrick's going to need another Supreme Verdict or something similar to stay in this game.
Yeah, that's 10 damage, putting Gerrick to 5, and we have 6 mana plus Force and Tribal Flames. So next turn, even if we get swept, we can just go 4 mana, Force the Chalice, 2 mana Tribal Flames use. So Zach does have technically lethal even through a Verdict here, so Gerrick's going to need a lot of stuff.
All right, Teferi, that's, deals with 1 token, draws a card, but without the mana for Supreme Verdict, can Gerrick even deal with the rest of this stuff? That was... Pick up Kaheera, I think. Yeah, well, unless the life totals are dramatically wrong, this game looks over. I guess there could be
I think,
all right.
I was going to say.
There has to be a lot of Solitudes to deal with this board.
Now, life totals made sense because Helix was the 3 and then 10 more, so.
Yeah. Okay, and we're going to game 3. So hopefully you're enjoying this, and okay, for Norwich owner Norman Cohen, I will remember at least this one round to please follow or subscribe, whatever you feel like doing. If you're enjoying the content, you can follow Nerd Rage Gaming on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. At one point, I was told NRG TikTok was incoming, but that was over a year ago. I haven't seen anything. I feel like that one has kind of passed us by. I don't expect any follow up on that platform. But
wait, Joe, you're not the TikTok manager?
Dude, this comes as such a surprise to you, I'm sure. But no, I do not have a TikTok. I do not watch TikTok. I could probably spell it if you gave me 2 tries, but that's about it.
But yeah, going back on what Joe was saying, NRG's putting on an amazing show. Every single event that they run is great, and just an awesome showcase of just live Magic. And I know a lot of people are fiending for live Magic, and it's slowly coming back. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and hope you guys are having a good time.
Yeah, speaking of people slowly coming back in, we had Caleb Scherer in the team event. It's the name I haven't seen in a long time. And in the chat, Feline Longmore. That's another name I haven't seen in a long time. So definitely some players from the previous decade coming back into play for Paper Magic, which is awesome. Nerd Rage is very pleased to be able to bring you continuing events once a month here on the channel around the Midwest of the country. And then we know I know we see requests, and I live in California, and people are like, "Hey, when's Energy coming to California?" Well, that's a little outside of the reasonable range, but hey, we're going to Kentucky. That's at least not Midwest, right? Is Kentucky Midwest? I don't. Oh, okay. I'm told it is. Well, never mind then.
I think that maybe depends on if you're from Kentucky or not. Yeah.
Well, maybe so. Yeah. All right. So Zach on another mulligan here, but did take down game 2 to even this up. We'll get that indicated on the screen momentarily.
Yeah, we'll have to see if you kind of saw that game. That was a really good example of game 1 versus game 2. So game 1, Zach didn't have any pressure on turn 2 or turn 3. Game 2, Zach did play the 2-drop, and you saw Gerrick 2-for-1 himself just to deal with it.
Mhm.
And that kind of like that decision to kill the creature on turn 2 by using the Solitude and an additional card just kind of snowballed almost the entire game. It just Gerrick was basically behind on resources almost the entire game. So we'll see if similar thing has to happen this game for Gerrick. Now, because Gerrick is on the play, he could have something like Teferi Bounce, which it looks like he does have. So that's a much cleaner answer to the Kavu than Solitude Menace card.
Yeah. These Kavus are looking pretty good, though. We haven't seen the interaction where they actually really get punished, like you talked about. The dress down making them look kind of embarrassing. But other than that, they are oversized and with a couple attack triggers that are nice to have. I guess that's a way to deal with Chalice also. I'm sorry. No, I was thinking attack disenchant, but it's not. It's attack exile card from graveyard. All right. Well, that's not as relevant. But
Yeah.
regardless, it's back on the screen, back on the board again.
Yeah, and we'll see if maybe Gerrick has a follow-up prismatic ending or something along those lines. Dress down as we talked about before. And also the awkward thing is, second Teferi. I was going to say we know that Zach has access to 8 Cascade spells, and Teferi making Cascade spells look a little awkward. Potentially Zach's hand might be full of those. Where it's we'll have to see what Zach's going on with.
Yeah, this is maybe a somewhat tough pairing for the 5-color Zoo deck. Its ways of advantage, cascading, and putting multiple creatures on the board can be cleaned up both by Supreme Vert or prevented by Teferi. So not ideal.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of problems that Gerrick's deck presents, and Zach doesn't have a lot of clean answers to those. Now, interesting, both players missing land drops here.
Right.
I would have to imagine that would favor. It's kind of tough because you would think that favors the aggro deck, but Zach's cards are maybe a little bit more expensive than the aggro decks that you're probably used to, and the fact that there's Teferi in play also makes things a little awkward because most of Zach's powerful cards are those Cascade spells that we mentioned. So, I would probably say that the way that this game is going maybe is good for Gerrick, but we'll have to see.
Okay, so there is a bit of a misstep there by Gerrick, who had to discard a hand size and then prismatic ending, which he can do at instant speed because it's a fairy. But by doing that on your own turn, he could have not lost that Jace, which currently can't cast anyway, but certainly would be nice to still have it in hand. And then here we have pick up Kaheera and pitch to Solitude. So back to the old original style of companions, which just get picked up and immediately discarded incarnations of one color or another.
Yeah, don't even put it in your hand. Just put it from your companion zone and just kind of tap it sideways to indicate that it's going to exile.
Yeah, that seemed to be what was happening for the first few months of the format. All right, Tribal Flames takes out Teferi, a third Teferi, and it pluses.
That's so rough because you know for a fact Zach would only make that play if he has a whole bunch of Cascade cards, and the fact that there's another Teferi there, it just makes it so backbreaking because obviously he wanted to set up Tribal Flames Teferi, untap, play a Cascade spell, but because the third Teferi showed up, then that couldn't happen as well. So
at least that one traded 1-for-1, as that Teferi did go up to 5. Not too many burn spells. I guess Unholy does the same thing. Able to trade 1-for-1 on plussing Planeswalkers, which did, I feel like, noticeably diminish the power of Planeswalkers a little bit, but they're still pretty strong. As here's Narset.
Yeah, so Narset's going to find more answers, potentially a Chalice here. Oh, or just Narset.
Okay, so Gerrick's not too excited about the prospect of Chalice on 1.
Okay, we finally get to cast the Bloodbraid Elf. Feels like there's been a Teferi in play, the entire game.
It does.
Okay, we'll see if Gerrick wants to Solitude this. Okay.
Okay. General is a nice card here. That's a pretty impressive 3-drop, and then attack across here. And okay, Gerrick just lets the Narset go. Unclear if he even had an answer to it or not, but that's not too bad for Zach Havers. Keeping up here with Cascade, trying to keep up with the card advantage of the blue Planeswalkers.
Right. Yeah, notably, the General Ferrous Rokiric also can't be Solitude because it has hexproof and monocolored.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it also can't be Prismatic Ending. So Garrick's really only answer to it is actually Supreme Verdict, which I caught a glimpse. I think I did see that in Garrick's hand, which, it looks like a 2-for-1, but it's really only a 1-for-1. You're really only trading with the Bloodbraid Elf. That's the only resource that's that committed. So, probably a trade that he would be okay with. Maybe he doesn't want to commit more to the board at this point. And I think Gerrick is thinking, okay, how if his hand is maybe like really leaning on that Supreme Verdict, he might want to try and get a little bit more juice out of it before he fires it off. So that was kind of the decision that he was thinking about there.
Maybe this is a big swing to take in here. Now, Solitude cannot pick off General, but it's hexproof, so it could actually Solitude could take out something else and then block and trade with the General, I believe. Instead, we're just
Yeah,
going to see.
you actually see that the General didn't attack there. Really heads up by Zach. I actually kind of like that. Because obviously, if you attack with the General, Solitude hits the Mantis Rider, trades for the General, that can be pretty backbreaking. So, pretty heads up play by Zach there. I like that.
All right, so that was a Castle Scry there at the end of the turn. And Gerrick, well, if he held back Supreme Verdict before, he certainly needed to play it here. And there you go. And some damage came across, but Garrick's still sitting at 13 with an empty board. Although Zach's still got a full hand.
Yeah,
Something
Zach
that,
still got some resources.
something you wouldn't see on a traditional deck that's committed this much to the board and played a couple burn spells. They would be low in hand size, but these Cascade spells do a good job of not exhausting your resources. And we see here another Bloodbraid and I think another General.
Yeah, specifically with the elves and the shardless agents, you get to put a lot of pressure into play, as you said, without committing a lot of resources. So you can kind of play this. You can kind of play Garrick's game alongside him, which is something that aggressive decks don't usually get to do. So,
And then, so yeah, Hexproof, like you said, Hexproof monocolored, fairly relevant here. I guess it can be bounced by Teferi, but we've already seen 3.
they never have the 4th one, right?
Now, there's another
Yeah.
Narset. That's not too much of a worry.
I
Garrick's
see
like,
chat
hold it.
asking about the lands that Garrick used to cast Verdict. There's a Mysticate in there. It's the one that's the furthest to the bottom. So I know it's hard to tell. There's a lot of promos over there, but there was a Mysticate.
Okay, there is the 4th Teferi.
I guess we spoke too soon.
And yeah, bounce the General. And yeah, now Zach, I mean, with Garrick at 10 and the kind of the beastly burn spells that are in his deck, able to bring across a lot of damage, I don't know what this Bloodbraid Elf is going to attack this turn. There are 3 legitimate options.
I know, right? Especially because I believe I saw at least one copy of Tribal Flames, I think. I see a Bolt of Tribal Flames. Does Zach have 2 red mana? No, I think that's Temple Garden, Breeding Pool, Forest, and then Grixis Land.
All right, well, it doesn't matter this time as Solitude will take it out.
Yeah, Zach's mana with all these dual lands into play actually kind of awkward that he only has access to 1 red source because he can't really fire off multiple red spells, which is something that he really wants to be able to do.
Right, being able to bolt down that Narset would have been nice there. Is it's going to stick. Teferi's going to stick. Be able to plus up, allow instant speed sorcery removal next turn, which is nice because Zach does have a fair number of haste creatures in hand. Now let's see what Narset is able to bring up here.
And Zach's really trying to fade a Daze on doing here.
All right. Jace is the worst, although I guess it's still pretty solid. How are we even? How am I even able to actually say Jace isn't the worst? I mean, geez, Jace used to be just the end all be all, and now it's fine. But
you've been converted. It's not like the good old days where you just Jace back at Terminus, right?
Yeah, those were the good times.
Yeah, so if we get a look at Zach's hand, I think I saw Tribal Flames, definitely Tribal Flames Bolt. I think maybe a Kavu in there too, maybe another Bloodbraid Elf. But yeah, like we talked about, just all these red cards, but only run red source, so can't really set up a good double spell turn.
Mm-hmm. All right, Gerrick with 4 mana, another Verdict, maybe.
Kind of interesting to main phase the Verdict after
I agree.
Teferi Plus.
I wonder if that was something, just kind of a mental slip, that because it does seem very questionable to do that here with Teferi on the board, and it did plus this turn.
Yeah, and with all the burn spells in Zach's hand, just choosing to go with a Kavu instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, Prismatic Ending will dispatch that. So Teferi plus was meaningful there, and Gerrick gesturing there, that was the kind of gesture I would imagine someone making if the clock was a factor. I don't know that it necessarily is. Okay, the players have plenty of time.
Yeah, clock shouldn't be an issue this game.
No.
Yeah, Chad also brings up a good point. Gerrick, this is very strange. I don't think you really don't see this very often, but Gerrick is playing a blue-white control deck without the card Counterspell. So these burn spells in Zach's hand are even more effective than they would normally be against traditional blue-white decks because there's no counterspells. And as we talked about, we kind of assumed that Gerrick was going to board out the force negations because they don't have a ton of targets. So it's really unclear how many how many answers to the Tribal Flames that Gerrick actually has access to.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so Windswept Heath will increase the mana capabilities for Zach here. And okay, here is a Lightning Bolt. Teferi is done.
So if we're bolting Teferi, that kind of leads me to believe that there's got to be a Bloodbraid Elf in hand.
Right, I agree.
Gerrick's given a long think about this. I wonder what he could be. I guess maybe it's got to be Force Negation, right? Because we know that there's no other card that could be there.
So, and then he signaled for a judge. We saw the dice. He did remove the dice from the Teferi and then reconsider. I don't think this is a scenario where he's asking, "Hey, did I acknowledge the spell resolving since I took the dice off?" So there must be something else here.
Yeah, I wonder what it could be in his hand. Interesting.
I wonder if this is a question of the Teferi is going to die, but it plus on my turn. Can I play sorceries still, even after the Teferi is dead? The answer to that is yes, but that is a conceivable question that would be asked here.
Yeah, if he has like a prismatic ending or something.
So
not like the old days when the damage prevention ruled the planeswalkers used to just bolt this would be one of those situations where you just you bolt upstairs and you'd have no idea what Zach's even doing with the bolt.
That's true. That would make a big difference on having to protect yourself from burn spells. Okay, so here is the Kavu. So no haste.
Interesting. I wonder what the reasoning, what Zach's thinking about, why he would want to bolt Teferi if we don't have a follow-up Cascade spell. Because I know there's a Tribal Flames left over, but that, killing Teferi wouldn't really have an effect on casting Tribal Flames specifically. So I'm kind of curious about that.
All right, well, the turn is passed. Gerrick, now, for one of the few times this match, actually up on cards, which is something that Jace tends to do. And
yeah, that's all thanks to Jace.
And a slew of Teferis and Supreme Verdict. So we know there's no more Teferis coming.
That is true. We've gone through all 4. Legally, there cannot be any Teferis left in Gerrick's deck unless a Day's Undoing gets cast to shuffle them all back in.
Well, that's true. That would certainly.
Then all 4 are back on the table.
Yeah, that would reload. Well, now how do you approach this from Zach's perspective? Do you just try and trade off and threaten on the board and then draw 2 Tribal Flames and blow up your opponent? That's tough since 1 is gone, but I think we said that there's 1 more in hand, so
Yeah, it's tough. Like from Zach's perspective, again, we have a lot more information. We know
Mhm.
that Gerrick doesn't play counterspell. Zach obviously doesn't know that per se.
Right.
So it might be playing under the assumption that okay, well, what's my best line against the card counterspell, and that might kind of trip him up a little bit.
Yeah, not only does he not know that there aren't counter spells, he probably assumes there are.
Yeah.
And here's Tribal Flames, and okay, Jace goes down, but Solitude on the board now. The ability to gain life for Gerrick is going to make this a lot harder for Zach to ever win through burn.
Yeah, and there's also a hall, which I
There's
don't know if that's necessarily going to get fired up
well,
just
Gygery
yet, but
Sanitarium activates here, so Zach will discard Force of Vigor, and yeah, that's just kind of a nuisance. The Gygery Sanitarium, we may reach a point again for too long where Zach is kind of stuck.
locked up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Seagate
Okay.
Restoration for 5. 4 cards in hand. You drop one more than that, so you drop 5.
That is the first time I've ever seen that card cast. Nice.
Well, you don't play enough Pioneer then. But
that's
yeah,
true. Yeah.
See, I mean, it doesn't get cast in Pioneer very often either, but it is more common than it is in Modern. Okay, so land drop made, and now Gerrick doesn't have to worry about discarding hand size anymore. Yeah, Zach Evers. Ooh, this is gonna be tough.
Yeah, Gerrick's not worried about cards anymore. Now,
No.
Gerrick at 12, Zach's got, I couldn't quite get a glimpse of what he's got left over. I'm trying to think if it's not really a lethal line here unless the leftover is Tribal Flames and you like Bloodbraid Elf into another Tribal Flames. That would get us 13. Assuming that there's no Solitude or anything like that, but
yeah,
now it's kind of rough. Once you let the player untap who just drew an additional 5 cards in his 10 cards in his hand, it's probably going downhill from there.
All right, there's a Helix. Will you even shoot here? You're shooting Narset, okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
So that means no haste.
And well, for a second, that Gerrick picked up everything at once. I was like, "There's no way he's conceding here. What's happening?" And no attack from Bloodbraid Elf and no block either. Is that what just happened?
Well, he couldn't attack because there was the dress down, so that made it lose haste. Okay. I'm kind of surprised no block there though, because you're kind of treading water with the Solitude at this point.
Mm-hmm. All right, there's a fresh Narset, and okay, chalice is found. That's nice. Gerrick doesn't even really need Days Undoing here. He's got plenty of cards, and Zach already doesn't have very many. So,
and now you can just chalice on 2 to just basically shut off all the Tribal Flames and that kind of stuff. Although I think Zach's already gone through at least 2, maybe 3. So yeah, might just want to hold on to the chalice for a little bit. It's not clear that there are enough impactful 2-mana cards left in Zach's deck anyways. And as we said before, you can't chalice for 12.
No, well,
you can try.
I'm not even sure there's enough land in Gerrick's deck to be able to do that. There probably are. And there's a Days Undoing being discarded to Gygery Sanitarium, I think. Not
yeah, he's got too many cards. Doesn't even want the Days Undoing.
Well, yeah.
Just says, you know what? Yeah, I got enough cards. It's fine.
Yeah, well, not anymore after just 2 incarnations there. Yeah, Gerrick's like, well, I don't have to discard the hand size anymore, but just in case, I'm gonna deplete my hand enough that it's not relevant. Or maybe he's just trying to make the Days Undoing worthwhile.
Yeah, he might also have a second one. Maybe that's why he pitched the first one. Shocking. Okay. Because we're firing up the hall.
Let's go, Storm Giants. Yeah.
10 damage, 3-turn clock. Now we can still activate the Sanitarium. So now we can just go draw step. Yeah, we should fit. Gerrick should have this one locked up.
Yeah. But
Yeah, for those of you in chat who don't know the interaction, there is Narset, which prevents your opponent from drawing extra cards. And if you activate Sanitarium, Gaia Reach Sanitarium in the draw step, which says each player draws a card and discards a card. If your opponent has no cards in hand, they can't draw because they've already drawn for their turn, and then they have to discard the card that they drew in their draw step. So it's essentially just a way to kind of lock up the game.
Mm-hmm. There goes an Omnath, and that will do it. So Gerrick Alford will advance to 3-0. All right, so we are going to skip the time-shifted replay and move in live to the backup match. Let's go ahead and do that right now. No breaks for anybody involved. You want more magic? We're going to bring it to you.
Non-stop. All
That's
the
right.
action. Let's see if we can take a look at who we have. So, there is an other deck list. Oh, Joe. Joe.
So
I think you should thank the producers for this one. If you want to take a look at, take a quick look at Mark's deck list.
All right, Mark Mehochko with, okay, it says colorless combo. Is that in fact not what it is? Let's take a look. Oh,
ask and you shall receive.
I even said, man, I never get to see the Core Tapper deck, and it's another Core Tapper deck. All right. Against Rick Courtney's 5-color Indomitable Creativity. Okay, well, that's a deck that we see some of occasionally using Indomitable Creativity, in this case to power out Archon of Cruelties, which is certainly a respectable thing to be doing, and he is up a game. Mark, let's go ahead and get this Core Tapper nonsense started.
Ooh, the Mirrodin's Core. Yeah, so what as we saw a very brief glimpse of it last round, but Mark is essentially playing a lot of cards that add counters to permanents and trying to combine that with Magistrate Scepter, which is a card that you can pay 4, tap it to put a charge counter on it, and you can tap and draw 3 charge counters on it to take an extra turn. So you're combining that with stuff like Surge Node, Core Tapper to put additional counters. You have Power Conduit, which also works very well with Saga, because you can remove counters in the Saga, keep the Saga in play. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. Astral Cornucopia, which is stuff that you normally see in like Dicetron and things like that. So a lot of cool interactions going on in Mark's deck.
All right. Well, hopefully you get to see some of them. Mark is down a game already. It is game 3. Okay. So Mark has won a game.
Got that updated for you. We got Cornucopia Core Tapper. So this is a good line because now even if Rick has a removal spell for the Core Tapper, you can just sack it to put count. Oh, we're actually going to go right now. Okay. We got some plans for that mana.
Another one. All right. So yeah, I'll try and keep up the pace on since some of the cards in this deck may be unfamiliar to some people or commentators. We'll keep a steady pace of revealing what the heck's going on here.
Yeah, Power Conduit is especially a really interesting one because there's so many things that basically get counters for free, as you saw the Mirrodin's Core and the Tendo Ice Bridge, and it's just, now we get 4 counters in this Cornucopia, which allows us to Karn. I believe now I think let me take a look at Mark's deck list. I know some of these lists are playing all 8 of the keys in the main deck, and some of them are sideboarding the 8th one, so we'll have to see. Looks like there is a sideboard Voltaic key, so that's a card that you might want to get here.
All right, let's see. Karn Greatcure obviously providing a lot of options for a colorless deck to do all kinds of nonsense. That is Mystic Forge that was found. And okay,
so we went for a Magistrate Scepter, which got spell pierced.
Yeah, sadness all around. But Mystic Forge can do a heck of a lot of work. That's a card I played with Summon Legacy. I was going to say,
there's a creativity here. That's kind of rough.
Mm-hmm. So that's going
to get the Karn. Yep.
Yeah, there's the Archon of Cruelty. So opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, I believe.
Yeah, creature or planeswalker, discard a card, lose 3 life, and then you draw a card and gain 3 life.
Right.
We didn't. Go ahead.
We didn't sacrifice the Karn, though, did we?
What are we missing? Are we missing something? Okay, I think they just realized it.
Um,
Wait. There was nothing else in play to sacrifice, right?
I
It
don't
was just
believe
the
so.
card?
Yeah, I mean, Mark did discard a card. I think we may have.
May have not resolved the trigger entirely.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Mark
Interesting.
is. I don't know something. Maybe if we can, we're
Yeah, if we can
rapidly
maybe
if
pause it.
we're rapidly going to get to a point where we can't back it up, but
Yeah.
it does appear that was missed.
And I'm guessing that's a trigger you can't miss with the
Well,
Archon. Those rulings always get kind of confusing to me.
you certainly can miss it, but you're not allowed to resolve half of an ability. And we know that the trigger was remembered because the card for his hand was discarded.
Right.
So there's
Yeah,
no
it's
opportunity. So if we, I mean, I don't know that we can rescue this at this point, but
probably too far gone.
director, if you can, or okay, so a judge has been called for, and Rick's like, oh yeah, you were supposed to sacrifice Karn.
Yep, now they realize it.
Okay, well, boy, about 9 things happened between now and then. So
Yeah, there was a Karn activation, an Ancient Stirrings cast, a Key cast, a Paradox Engine cast, so I don't know. It's going to be tough with this one. We'll have to see what the judge says, what the ruling is. I'm kind of with you. It's probably too many things have happened at this point to really rewind the game state. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's, but I was going to say because like you said, you can't resolve half of the trigger, and they did resolve half of the trigger. Because
mhm.
normally with missed triggers, it's something where you can just. I think the ruling is your opponent gets to choose whether or not they want to put it on the stack or something like that. But with resolving part of a trigger, it's kind of weird. We'll have to see what happens with this, but
All right, so while we have the moment here, let's go ahead and bring up some of the cards that are now in play that weren't before. So like we've got Mystic Forge in play for Mark, which is allows the deck to play off the top.
yeah, I want to say this is close to infinite.
Right.
If assuming the game state stays the way it is, I think this is just basically infinite.
Yeah.
Because
So
you can activate if you brick on a spell off the Mystic Forge, you can just tap it.
mhm.
Hypothetically, I guess you could hit like back-to-back lands or something.
You can.
But
There's also Paradox Engine, I believe, is the card on the bottom, which is a 5 or 6 mana artifact that whenever you have an artifact come into play, I believe you can untap the rest of them, which is another way to untap the Mystic Forge and clear off a land off the top of the deck. We do have the Surge nodes in play, and we have the Karn that likely shouldn't be. Now, I believe we did wish with the Karn to start this turn. I don't recall at this point what it got, but it's probably one
it
of
got the engine.
it got the Paradox Engine. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then that led to, yeah, I don't know. This is what judges are for. Their experience with cleaning up stuff like this, but
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Like you said, there's normally in circumstances like this, if not too much has happened, we can just kind of rewind the game state. But because of how many things have happened, it'll be tough to say. I'm not sure if they can really go all the way back there.
mhm. And with the Ancient Stirring being cast, cards have gone from the top of the deck to the bottom. Cards have been revealed. I don't know if the Mystic Forge ever activated. They might be discussing, is it possible to back up at this point? Or they may be demonstrating for the judge everything that's happened. And then it'll be up to the judges to determine what the solution is going to be. But yeah, this is unfortunate. This is a reality that does happen in Paper Magic. And I mean the fault is on both players here for not properly resolving the Archon trigger.
Yeah, the failure to maintain game state.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's what that would go under. Yeah, but things like this have always changed. It now obviously it's one of those things where the part of the trigger had resolved. So, but yeah, it's really tough. Not sure
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going to happen. We'll have to see. Like you said, the judges are there. They're very good at creating, fixing these kinds of issues. So that's what they're there for. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. All right. So while we've got a minute here, while that gets sorted out, what's a interaction that you can remember in one of your matches or that you saw live that got rolled back that was fairly extensive? Anything come to mind? I,
Um,
I'll go first while you think. So I had
okay.
one where a an Emrakul went to the graveyard and then was exiled, and then everything shuffled in, and then the other player, my opponent, was like, "Oh, I wanted to activate Scavenging Ooze before everything shuffled in," and the deck had only been partially shuffled. So the
Okay.
judges determined we'll try and figure out how many cards on the bottom of the deck used to be in the graveyard, undo it, allow the opponent to select one, and then shuffle everything else back together again. And that took, it doesn't
Uh,
sound drastic, but that took quite a while to figure out and resolve. So
yeah.
that's one that is in my memory. You have one?
I can't think of any one specific situation off the top of my head, but I have
Mm,
been, involved in situations like that in the past where a couple of things have happened. Again, it's really hard to rewind the game state, especially if library is changing, you're
mhm.
rearranging the bottom cards,
Yeah,
shuffle happens, this and that, and it really kind of all depends on whether or not that the judges think they can reasonably get back to, essentially get to the game state back to where it was before the error occurred.
right, right. Yeah, so this will take a moment. But you've certainly played. I guess we can expand the topic. You've certainly played your share of competitive Magic and Paper. What's a memorable judge call, even if it didn't recall a rewind, that was just a mess that you can recall having to be sorted out, where judges played a role in fixing a match.
Well, there was a recent one. I wasn't actually a part of this, but I heard that there was it was a local RCQ, and there was a judge ruled that it was just a very simple one, but a judge ruled that you couldn't crew at instant speed. So
Okay.
the person, and somehow that got upheld. Obviously, that's not the case, but and then the Greasefang player was just like, okay, my deck just doesn't work now, or what's going on here? Like the entire reason that I'm playing this deck. So yeah, that was one that I didn't experience firsthand, but I heard
Mhm.
about that through word
Oh,
of mouth.
judges getting calls wrong. That's a whole other topic of conversation that will probably get us in trouble. So maybe we shouldn't go too
True.
deeply into that one. Okay, so the head judge is now being consulted, and things are still. We're not missing any live play. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I
There was
figured
a
this one would take a little bit longer.
Yeah, yeah. There was a comment. Oh, the player was playing very quickly after that happened. They're probably trying to end the game before the ruling is caught. I don't think that's what it was. I think this is a scenario where you're practiced at running your combo. So once it's assembled, especially a combo like that has 1,000 moving pieces, you're used to moving through it very quickly once your opponent's not interacting. So I think that's all that was. The fact that the pace of play sped up, I don't think has anything to do with um, what this trigger.
For sure. Yeah, and obviously we're getting close to the end of the round. Players are, they're definitely under some time pressure trying to make sure that they can finish the game. We're in game 3. There's, probably when they started game 3, probably less than 10 minutes left. So it's, they have to take that into consideration as well. It happens, there's obviously mistakes happen. Not everybody's perfect. People are, and again, it's on both players
Mm,
to maintain the game state. So it's not necessarily one person's fault. It's in most of those situations, it's going to be, just players not maintaining the game state.
right. But let us know how you feel about the issue. If you have never been involved in a judge counter like this and always play cleanly, go ahead and follow the channel. Whereas if you want to tell us like, oh yeah, you've made mistakes, you can relate to the players like this, you can tell us that by following the channel. So yeah, it's just universal. Everyone's been involved in this stuff. If you've played enough paper magic, these things will happen. uh, it does. Well, the only problem with it right now is that it takes a long time to resolve when it's this messy, and so we have to wait. We have to sit here and wait. All right, the ruling is being made. Wow, we are going to
Hey,
back up. Okay, so that
I
that
like
is,
it.
yeah, I do too. I mean, obviously, this is the best outcome. It's just a
Yeah, the
matter of
natural conclusion.
whether it was possible or not. But yeah, so we are going to roll back the game to where we're at. That process might also take a few minutes, but we'll see.
True. We may have to go back for a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we know. So the point where this started was when, well, the first action that was taken that shouldn't have been was Karn wishing for Paradox Engine. So that when this all ends, oh boy, Ancient Stirrings was. I don't know if there
in
was
the hand.
Right. I was gonna say I don't know if there was another Ancient Stirrings cast previously. I don't remember one. So I think
I don't
that's
see
the
one in
one.
his graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the order of operations was untap, draw, Karn minus, get engine, play Paradox Engine, play Ancient Stirrings, trigger the Paradox Engine. I think there might have been a Voltaic Key activation, and then I think that's when it got realized.
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. If the Mystic Forge never activated, that simplifies things somewhat.
Yep.
Question from the chat: can they not use the stream video to help back up? So they actually don't do that. In general, I believe it has something to do with treating all matches equivalently, and since there's not the ability to do that in anybody else's match, they try not to use video replays for. They do use it for cheating investigations, but they don't use it for fixing things like this. I believe is how things work.
I think that's correct as well. Like you said, you want to, even though there is a feature match, we want to kind of make sure that each match is treated as fairly and as equally as possible, and just having access to that within it sort of creates this kind of like, I guess you could call it an unfair advantage if you're in a feature match. So I assume we try to tend to avoid that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, chat, what's going on? Who's qualified for Atlanta? Who's making the trip to Atlanta? One of the commentators is. I can tell you that right now. And one of them is still trying.
I think I'm about 8 RCQs deep, and I only have I have 3 top 8s, but
it took me 8 tries before winning. So nothing to feel shameful about not having it done yet. We had qualified 3 players for Atlanta this morning. The winners of our team event, and one more today. The winner of this Modern 5K also will book a DreamHack pass or DreamHack badge, I guess. Which I don't know. Have you ever been to a DreamHack event, Devin?
I did. I went to Dallas. That was a lot of fun. So I'm going to end up going to Atlanta regardless of whether I qualify or not. But that was just an absolute blast.
All right. So I have never been to a DreamHack, so I'm looking forward to my first one in November, and I'm playing high stakes Pioneer as it is. I'm curious now. Are you aware, and maybe some people in chat aren't, about how the set release schedule is going to work for the DreamHack event? This is pretty wild. Where we do have Dominaria United, which is the paper release date is September 10th, and then we have the Brothers War, which paper release date is November 18th. DreamHack Atlanta begins November 19th, which is the next day. So, if you're planning,
believe it's legal, right?
It is. So if you're in the region and planning on going to play in the last chance qualifiers, which the DreamHack does have, you can go on Friday and try and qualify into the main event, which starts on Saturday. Keep in mind that Friday, the day of the last chance qualifiers, is the first day that the Brothers War is paper legal.
Yeah.
So, wow. I mean, that's just
it's going to be a wild event.
Yes, it is. And I imagine you will see some qualified players walking around Friday looking at what's going on in the last chance qualifiers to learn, the impacts on the new cards. It is going to be interesting. I have played in events and Pro Tours where a set was just recently released. It is certainly more hectic. And yeah, I don't really even have an opinion whether I'm happy about this or not. It's just kind of mind-blowing that that's actually the reality of what's happening.
I tend to, the PTs that I've played in were kind of like the old school ones where they had, it usually was about, they give the set release, then 2 weeks, then the PT.
Right.
And, 2 weeks still, there was some times where they would have like an event, maybe a moderately sized event prior to the PT, and we get some results that way. But for the most part, everybody's kind of on the same playing field. So.
Okay. So we're going back to the table. And apparently the backup was determined to be impossible, so we're going to stick with where we're at. Someone in the chat says I'm wrong and it's not legal for the last chance, but maybe that's true. I just assumed it was because that's the paper release date.
Wait, is
But
it
I did
not
not.
legal for the last chance, but legal for DreamHack?
I
That
have
there's no way that would be the case, right?
that seems unlikely, but I don't actually know. It is going to be a crazy weekend either way. I agree with that. Anyway, so this game continues on, and Mark Mehochko is going to go through the motions of what we think is probably an infinite win here was regarding mana and card draws and activations of any number of artifacts.
I think it's not 100% infinite, but he would have to hit like 6 lands in a row off these Mystic
Right.
Forges. So.
Yeah. And now there's a second Mystic Forge in play, which makes it even less likely to fail as long as there's sufficient mana, which there probably is.
I think that's 3 Mystic Forge, actually. Yeah, I think it's 3 Forge.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So I have played this deck in Legacy a number of times, although it doesn't contain all the same cards, but it does have Mystic Forge, Paradox Engine, and Karn Great Creator, and it's great fun, even if it's not elite. And it looks like Rick Courtney is going to pack it up here. So unfortunate that the trigger wasn't resolved correctly. Nothing necessarily to say that Mark wouldn't have won anyway, but we obviously would prefer things to resolve correctly at all times, and I slip up there, such as it is. Okay, so that's going to conclude round 3. I would anticipate a fairly short break because the time extension, the delay on that match,
It was probably the last match.
Yeah, probably. So we're going to step away, and we'll probably be back very quick. So stick around. This is energy coverage of a Modern 5K. We'll be right back.